DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. We're joined once again by Steve Cleveland, former BYU basketball coach. Steve, good morning.
I like the fact that we start off the show with a little Hall & Oates.
Well, the reason is the birthday boy. Birthday number 77 for John Oates. So a little shout out to John on his birthday.
There you go. I love it.
So many questions. Before we get to Egor Demin, and we do want to get to him, let's start with the Final Four Saturday night. As Duke, which has been rock solid, only one loss all the way through ACC play, they're the regular season champs, the tournament champs. They win it without Flag after he gets injured. They get to the Final Four. A lot of teams that counted on freshmen and spent a lot of money on kids who are supposed to be one and done. A lot of them either missed the tournament, barely made the tournament, and fell by the wayside quickly. But Duke, with their three guys, right, all the way to the Final Four. But I thought, big stage, a lot of pressure. It's a one-off, and they get knocked out. How much of that should college basketball coaches be thinking about when they use their NIL money and put these teams together? Obviously, we know what BYU's doing. We'll see what Alex Jensen does. We see this around the country. And how much would you just go with 22 and 23-year-old junior and seniors? They may not be NBA prospects, but in the biggest moments, they're going to be easier to count on than an 18 or 19-year-old. What would you do putting together a roster if you were coaching these days?
You know, I think the influence in my life has been to develop and build a program from the bottom up, and that's only experience I've really known, to be able to come in and get guys to come in for 1 year. I think good coaches can adjust to anything, but for me personally, I love the rebuilding piece of it. Not the rebuilding, but the building piece of it with seniors. And you're looking at Houston, and who has a huge win there, and you're talking about guys, a senior, a junior, a senior. I mean, these are experienced guys, and some of them haven't even been with Houston all the time. They've been with other programs. So in building a program, I remember getting transfers and junior college guys, and that's kind of unheard of these days. But to have guys that have experience, that've been through it, been through tough times, they kind of had a scratch and claw to even get to that level, you can count on those guys. And I think you trust those players. And not to say that you can't do what blue bloods like Duke and others have done, but when I look at Auburn with Bruce Pearl and know him and know how he coaches and know how he goes about things, it was all about seniors. And obviously Florida beat them, but they got to a point where they had chances to get to Final Fours and win national championships. I think Houston's done the same thing, and they've done it with senior leadership. And so there's no way that I'm not going to be pulling for Houston. I have nothing against Todd Golden. I remember when he was at USF, and I was doing some TV stuff myself and had a chance to kind of get to know him. But I love the model that we see with Houston and Kelvin Sampson, and there's just some toughness there and some grit that they've had to get through and fight through, and consequently, they're the big dance. It's not that you got to have talent, obviously. Talent's really important, but I love the fact that you can have the experience and have had those tough, difficult moments and to kind of come through. So I think we all kind of – none of these teams are underdogs per se. They're all great teams and great coaches, but I love the model of Bruce Pearl and Kelvin Sampson and how they built this.
And yet Tyrese Proctor is a junior, the most experienced guy on the team, and he clanks the front end of a one-on-one with the game on the line.
I know. Hey, you know what? It's life as we know it at that level, and those you see it. It focuses at the biggest moment that everybody remembers. But there were a lot of missed free throws, a lot of missed wide open shots to win games, and it's part of the game. It's unfortunate. And sometimes we get labeled, but my thinking is that as a coach and having to go and console young people who have missed an easy shot or missed a free throw, and it it's right there for the world to see, and so it's difficult. But I tried in games that I coached and that were important and meaningful that we lost to make sure that we lose the team. We don't no individual, despite the fact that somebody misses free throws, they had to get to those places where they are right now. And so you have to be so positive with these young people and let them know and let the team know. It can destroy a team when we start pointing fingers, and no one's doing that. I get that at any level for the most part, but it's heartbreaking when you see young people that want it, that put themselves in a position to have a huge moment and miss free throws. And, you don't forget those things. I can remember games in which I had opportunities and not playing at this level, but just no matter what the level was, whether it was coaching high school or junior college or Division I or playing in a Division I program, those are painful enough. And you just need to players. What I love about guys now, there's a sensitivity that maybe there wasn't when I was coaching, and today there seems to be much more of a sensitivity to how players feel and what's going on and making them feel good, even in their difficult moments. And I like that better, And but it's tough, hard on everybody. We've all watched it and seen it happen and see the despair, the angst that one goes through. But that doesn't define those guys. They're playing here at a very high level, and it's just painful for a while. And you come back and you forget about it and start preparing for next year and get back to the national dance again.
We're joined by Steve Cleveland, former BYU basketball coach. You've had to advise guys on going to the NBA or not, and you've probably had people take your advice and not take your advice. How much can a coach really set their own interests aside? And I guess there's an argument that setting aside your own interests in the long run is in your interest, so maybe that's a little easier to do. What would you tell Egor Demin? Go to the NBA, come back to college, improve your draft stock, make good money with NIL. What is the best course for him going forward?
I think you just mentioned it. I think the best thing for him going forward is to continue to work on his craft and his game. He's in a program that's going to have high-level people playing, and they're going to have, obviously, with AJ coming in and other recruits coming in. We watched him, and it was hard to watch him early on. You felt for him because he has all this publicity, and the world's expecting this about him and this and that, and it was tough. And I thought that the coaching staff did a good job in terms of taking him back and letting him sit and watch. My suggestion is that stay another year, work on your game every day, day in and day out, watch film, get in the weight room, and have a breakout year. And to do that, there's going to be a lot of attention, and he already has a lot of attention. And certainly he's a draftable young man right now. But if I was giving him counsel, it would be stay a year. It's not going to hurt your stock, and you probably improve it. And you got a chance to, maybe win a national title. They got to the Sweet 16. Maybe they're a Final Four team next year if everything's work out. So that would be my suggestion, that he do that. I've been around him enough. I know how much he loves being here. And he's got great friendships, and he's got a staff that is been so supportive of him. And and the thing that I've enjoyed watching is that when he's not played well, he sat, and he needed that to watch and how he can get better. And so my suggestion is you stay. And I'm not going to have any influence on that young man, but he needs another year, I think, personally, for himself, for that team. And why not do it when you got a big-time guy coming in that you can kind of share that limelight with and maybe do something special?
That's an interesting thing. I think that with DeMonsa coming in, I don't think it takes away from anything that Demin has in his game. You can argue that it might help him advance it because he's known as a great, a seer of the court who's willing to give you the ball where you need to have it. So his playmaking skills probably could be advanced with DeMonsa there. I assume that DeMonsa is going to live up to the hype. He certainly had a ton of it, and we've seen Cooper Flagg live up to the hype, and those guys are talked about in the same sentence. So we'll go under the assumption that DeMonsa, whatever he is, he'll be able to show it during his probably one and only season with the Cougars. But how about a guy like Saunders, who developed into the man and the offense ran through him as far as his goals and aspirations for the NBA. I'm wondering how you think they will be affected if he chose to stay and then is playing with the number one recruit who is expected to be all that.
Well, I would do anything to keep Saunders in the program. He is the heart and soul of that team, and we saw that when Egor came in and he struggled and he was up and down. I'm not suggesting for a moment that there's going to be an issue with him developing and being the player that he is, but it's still something that's different for these guys. Playing in front of 20,000 people and mad crowds and all the things that go with it, I'm sure he won't disappoint. But for that team to reach its full potential, they need both those guys. And I think I think if anything, when you start looking at development of players, and we saw that with Egor, where man, he was up and down, and there were times in the season that, especially middle of the season, where he was sitting on the bench and watching, because that's what he needed to do because he was struggling, and they stayed with it, and then all of a sudden he's a more confident guy. So I know that I'm pretty sure AJ is probably a one and done deal, but for the two of them to play together and to kind of share notes, and I don't know if there's any kind of relationship with these guys. They may be good friends and knew each other before. I'm not sure. But I think that's a key thing for the coaching staff. Coach Young it's going to be really important for people to understand their roles, really important to talk about the development of these players. There's no issue about, we're going to get you ready for the next level, okay? These are guys already at the next level, okay? What they're going to try to do is win a national championship or get to a Final Four. Those are the things, the aspirations of this team. So I think that together, and they probably, I'm not sure exactly who's going to be there, but to ignore Saunders and Saunders needs to continue to be the guy that's got the ball in his hands, and it'll be shared. And despite the fact that AJ is all this and all that, and we know that he's going to be in the league, and as is Egor, but it's going to be a guy like Richie Saunders that leads this team. He's going to be the leader of the team. Those young guys aren't going to be the leaders of the team. It's going to be Richie Saunders, and then you can't sleep on him. He just did everything for this team. Maybe his numbers and shots attempted and stuff will change a little bit, but if they want to get to a Final Four, Richie Saunders is going to be that. He's going to be the captain. He's going to be the guy. That takes a lot of pressure off those young guys too, as well. That he can hold that, and that'll be his role to keep this team together. But yeah, I can't imagine that Richie doesn't play and have the same role that he's had. Maybe there'll be a fewer shots, and that's not going to bother him. Everybody has the same goal here. Let's get to a Final Four. This is a team that has the talent to get to a Final Four, and you don't want to have any kind of agendas or any kind of issues with team culture, chemistry. You don't want to have that, and I think that Richie Saunders brings that maturity. He brings that leadership that'll help both those great players.
So let's assume that AJ shows up, Demin stays, and Saunders stays. To your point about the expectations of, hey, Elite Eight, Final Four, title game championship, right? Sweet 16's now the floor. How do you go past that? So let's assume that those three guys stay. Hall is gone. What's the next one or two priorities for them to bring in? What do they need to do so they can beat Alabama, who beat them, beat Duke, who beat Alabama, beat Houston, who beat Duke? You see the path forward. There's a lot to be done. What's next?
Yeah. Is there any way that Mag has any more eligibility?
Well, if we've learned anything, never say never about eligibility in college sports, but I think not.
I think that they need that on this team. They need to bring in some experience, and you're right. I mean, it's one of those things that it's difficult enough, but they need to look for and recruit guys that just have that competitiveness. I would think in the portal, there are guys that are looking for second chances, and maybe it didn't quite work. I'm not following the transfer portal. I read things, and so I can't talk a lot about who those guys might be, but I'd be looking for an older guy. maybe one or two older guys that can come in and have an immediate impact and take the place of the guys that have left. So I think the transfer portal is the quickest way to do that. And you can find out, you'll have a lot of film on them. You can find out where they're at, where's going. And BYU's got enough prestige in the country now with guys they're playing and what they're doing and who's coming into the program. That an older guy might want to come in and be a part of that. And so if it's a good fit, I think it benefits BYU. But I do believe it's important that you have that kind of leadership. And I'm not suggesting this person needs to be a captain, but as somebody that just competes and sets an example. And I use Mag because he was a catalyst to that team. And I had no idea who he was. And if it's just a one-year deal, great. But you've got to have guys that are tough and gritty and willing to compete and not back down from anyone and be examples. And I think the examples of those guys last year, it helped them later in the season. You saw where Egor played with more confidence and it was more prepared for the big moment. So that's what I'd be looking for in the portal.
How about Gino Auriemma at 71 and Sampson at 69 coaching these guys? And obviously when I say guys, I'm including the ladies for UConn in terms of being able to relate to the players. You got two senior citizens coaching in the national title game in both men's and women's. And you're supposed to be sitting on a couch somewhere or playing shuffleboard on a cruise ship, and here they are still doing their thing. In terms of relating to players, I think that's pretty cool.
Oh, I do too. I know Todd Golden. I know Kelvin Sampson. I've been around him. Kelvin, the thing about Kelvin is I remember going to clinics and things. He always scared me. I never kind of knew what he was thinking. I was always really careful about what I was going to say and what I was going to do, and I had so much respect for how his teams played. But, I have Houston in my bracket. So does my wife, and it's kind of like, and she does her bracket. I don't even know why she picked Houston, but maybe because they were a 1 seed. But there isn't anything I'd love more than to see Kelvin Sampson win a national championship. And it's, they've beaten Gonzaga, they've beaten Purdue, they've beaten Tennessee, they beat Duke. I think a lot of the country is rooting for Kelvin Sampson to win a national championship. And nothing to take away from Todd Golden, who has certainly had a great year. And he's looking for his first national championship, but he's going to have a lot more opportunities. But, I can't wait to watch the game, and I'd be really, really happy to see Houston win a national championship for a lot of different reasons. But he's worked hard. He's been there. He's a veteran. He's had his relationships. A big part of watching these games when I watch games is I love when we can get into the huddle and you can see the interactions when they make a mistake and how Coach Sampson, takes him by the arm and, there's no browbeating. I mean, he's a fierce competitor, and I've watched enough of his games to know that he gets the most out of guys, and not everybody can play for Kelvin Sampson. But what he does know is that the guys he does have are with him, trusted, and they can handle that, maybe kind of extra energy that comes from Kelvin in coaching his games, and his just. What's the word I want to use? There's just an expectation that his players understand that we're going to play hard and that we're going to compete. And and you start looking, at the games they played, and Purdue was close, Duke was close, Gonzaga was a close game. Obviously Tennessee wasn't, but he brings a lot out of these guys, and they can never just get by themselves. And that's what I love about Kelvin Sampson.
Steve, we appreciate it as always. Thanks for joining us. We will talk to you again next week.
All right. See you guys. Take care.
There's Steve Cleveland talking hoops with us every week right here on The Zone. Steve Bartle, Utah insider for The Zone, covering the Utes, whether it's Alex Jensen putting together his program at Utah, spring football for the Utes underway. We will talk with Steve Bartle coming up at the top of the hour, 9:05, right here on The Zone.